Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on data silo integration, how to realize the value in segregated datasets. Our presenter today is Mikel Lindsaar, who is the founder and CEO of Reinteractive. Mikel is well known in the Ruby on Rails community as a blogger. He is also the author of Mail, which is the Ruby email handling library, and he is known for his extensive work on the Rails Action Mailer component. Mikel is the author of the book Why Rails and will be launching his next book, Confidence Software, this year. So welcome, Mikel.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rochelle, for that introduction. And yes, I'm glad to have you all here. As usual, in this presentation, Rochelle's already gone over what we're doing. Basically looking at the idea that many companies have many sources of truth, and what if they could all talk to each other? Well, that is possible, and that is the point of this presentation. As usual, in all of my talks, if you do have a question, feel free to ask it. Rochelle will manage that and ping me if there's something that we have a question that we can answer in the middle. Otherwise, I'll answer it at the end. Okay, to begin, let's just do a quick summary. So who am I? Well, that's my pretty mug there. Mikel Lindsaar, founder and CEO of Reinteractive. I've been doing software for quite some time. I started Reinteractive in 2010, and we've delivered hundreds of software projects quite successfully. We've grown over to over 40 staff in 8 years, about a 30% average growth every year, and last year about 50%. As Rochelle said, author of a couple of books, second one's coming out soon, and I've sold a couple of software as a service businesses in the last 5 years. And yeah, we've written some open source software as well. So let's get on to the meat of this presentation. What is a data silo? So a data silo is the idea that you've got trapped data in different areas. And I've got a definition here. It's a system holding business critical data that's not shared. So it's not able to be utilized in the most efficient way possible. And these data silos can be in all sorts of areas in your organization. For example, it could be in your accounting system. So your accounting system data silo might include all the purchases a client's made, or all the invoices they've had, or which products they've purchased, or how much they've paid for what product. It can be your payroll system, who's getting paid what, when, or contractors getting paid, all sorts of things like that. The stock system, how much of what item do you have available to sell? Do we have an excess of one item that needs to be sold urgently? Is there another item that if we cleared out, we'd make a nice income on because it's been sitting on the shelf now for 6 to 12 months and it's taking up space? These sorts of things. A community portal could be a data silo in many cases, unless you've got it already hooked in, like with communities on Salesforce or something like that. Unless it's already hooked up like that, your community portal can be a data silo. Which client is asking the most questions? Who's having the most problems with their applications? Who's raising concerns? What features are coming up? The warehousing system, same, you know, what stock's lying around where, or what's being produced, what's being stored. Your delivery system, did the product that the client ordered get delivered within the time frame required? Did we actually track that delivery, or is that all paper and thus a data silo? You know, you might not even know that as a salesperson you're calling a client, and if you don't know that their last order has already been delivered, you're going in blind, and you could, you know, walk into a bit of a trap. Your website e-commerce system, you know, who purchased what, who's visiting the site, who's interacting with it. Any sort of other data processing system in the company could be a key part, like, you know, credit checks, all sorts of things that could be done like that. And SaaS systems are also data silos. You know, you're in a lot of cases, the online software as a service systems you use are data silos and can contain critical business information that will prevent that information being used in the day-to-day operation of the business. These are all what we consider data silos, and to a greater or lesser degree, they can be integrated and data extracted from them. And that's what we're going to talk about in this webinar. So the first thing to look at when you're looking at a data silo is, how are you actually already using that data? Because even if it is a data silo, it's still going to be, the data in it is going to be used in some way. You will be looking at that data or using that data in some method or form in your current company. You know, the salesperson, before they go and visit the client, might open up their login on the stock system and see what stock is available, or they might go and log into the delivery system and make sure there are no outstanding deliveries for the client. Or they might also go and log into the accounting system and have a look at the invoices to that client. Are they overdue? Are they paying their bills? Do they need a bit of a bonus because they've been paying really promptly and we can give them a really good deal? Are they due for their contract renewal? All these sorts of bits of information are already being accessed by everybody in the company. And some of them that they should be getting access to may not even have permissions to access, because like some accounting systems, for example, the levels of access are not very fine-grained. So it's either you get access to all of the invoicing or none of it. And that can be a data security problem. You know, you don't necessarily want every salesperson in the company to have full access to the accounting system. So working out how you can get access to these things actually causes some issues within the organization. The most common way of accessing or aggregating data is manually. And this is what most organizations do. And to be frank, it's actually the most efficient way for small amounts of data. You know, if you're only occasionally looking at a system once every month or so, building a highly automated aggregation system may not be a very good cash benefit. However, if something is being accessed regularly, then it is something that we could look at in automating. Some problems with manually is that it's time consuming. You have to have staff doing it. You know, we had one client who was actually hired 10 people to sit there to manually cross-enter data from one system to another and to keep those two systems in balance. And that's quite a head count. You know, there's a lot of people involved in that. There's a lot of wages. But the other problem is it's prone to error, making keying entries or typographic entries as that data is moving across. There's always a need for some manual supervision on any data integration system. However, you don't want it to be the entire solution. You want the manual process to be the side check or the quality check to make sure synchronization errors aren't failing or systems are actually getting updated the way they should be updated. Manually is also the way most companies just do it anyway. So that example of the salesperson logging into many different systems is actually a manual method of data aggregation. The problem with that method is that it's not even persisted. So even though you're paying someone literally to go and log into 4 or 5 systems to find out all the data, that data is just getting dumped into that one salesperson's head and then getting lost forever. And 2 weeks later, the salesperson is going to have to do that process again, log into all of those systems, check it all out. Is this the right data? And then update their own understanding of what that current data mapping is. So having a situation where that salesperson could just go to one screen into their CRM and look at it and see that the client has 4 orders in the last 3 months, 3 of them have been delivered, 1's been delayed, and it's actually 4 days overdue, and they've been paying their bills on time, and in fact, they advance paid the last bill. It means that salesperson could call that client with reality or see that client with a lot of reality, and through that communication, increase the affinity with that client and increase the friendliness that they have with that client, because they can start the conversation with, you know, hi Suzanne, thanks for your recent orders. I can see one's overdue. I've already sent an email off to the delivery department to find out what's happening because I want to get that fixed, but I'm calling you today about blah, you know, and instantly they've already solved that first barrier to communication that was with that customer, which was, well, where's my last order? I've already ordered from you guys and you haven't even paid me. So this is a really important method of data aggregation. So manually is how most businesses do it, and as you can see, there can be some problems there. Another very common method, and the guy's got his thumbs up here because should we write, it always works, is the old import export of CSVs or Excel spreadsheets. I often say that Excel is the most popular programming language in the world, and it's actually quite surprising how many business functions are run on the back of a spreadsheet. But exporting, importing CSVs is a very valid way of doing it. It tends to be still a fairly manual process, and the problem with that is it becomes easy to forget. Oh yeah, I forgot to update it last month, so we're operating off wrong values. Okay, I better go do it now. It's still a time-consuming thing unless you automate it. Bulk updates can create some integrity issues. So what I mean by that is, say you're importing into the CRM system from the stock system, and the salesperson was in the CRM system and noticed something was wrong, so they fixed it and updated it. But the next day, the bulk update from the stock system came in and overwrote that salesperson's changes because it was just a mass bulk update. This sort of thing can happen quite often with CSV imports because you've got so much data in the CSV to export and import. The other obvious problem with the CSV export import is it's not real time. So the update is only going to happen when the actual batch is run at some point. And if that batch is not run, or if it's delayed or whatever, then it just goes out of date. So while CSVs are a very good upgrade from manual, we've got a manual process, which is manually keying. CSVs are now an upgrade to that. They're still not a real solution to the problem. The next thing that many companies do is having separate system integration. And what I mean by this is, system A can talk to system B, but system B can't talk to C, and C can't talk to A. So it's a lot of moving parts, a lot of cogs, trying to keep turning together and trying to keep running. So this is where you might have the payroll system talks to the accounting system, but those two then become their own data silo and won't talk to anything else. The other problem with this is that different system integrations with direct API connections can have different levels of miscommunication, or sorry, what's the right word for that? Different systems connecting to systems directly with their own APIs can have different rules for their updates. And if you have 2 or 3 of these in a company, or 4 or 5 of them, then you've got data flowing in many different directions that isn't being controlled and is not being updated. And this can be a issue. You've got security issues, you've got complex accessibility issues. A bit of data might be getting updated by one system, and then 5 minutes later, it gets overwritten by another system. And keeping track of that and keeping on top of that can be a bit of a problem. So then, what options do we have for integration? Well, there's quite a few, and we're going to go through a few of them now. The first common way to integrate many different systems is using a software as a service integration like MuleSoft or Dell Boomi, etc. There's a plethora of these out there. The other ones include things like Zapier, and there's some others around that type. Now, there's some pros and cons to these, which I want to go through and give some understanding around. And the other thing I should mention is that these pros and cons are not absolute. So there's like, even when I say there's limited connection options, well, MuleSoft and Dell Boomi have a lot of connection options. So, the truth is that these pros and cons relate to each other as I move through the different 3 options that I'm going to show. So the good thing about a SaaS integration like these is they're fast to implement. So they've already created a fair number of connectors, and they're relatively quick to pull those connectors together and get them working. Because of that, they're fairly low cost, relatively speaking, to building your own platform, for example. They're usually quite well tested because more than one organization are using those connectors. However, there are limited connection options. You can only connect to what they can connect to, or you're willing to pay for additional connectors to connect to. The synchronization rules already exist, and there's a well-tested synchronization architecture around that. And what I mean by synchronization is making sure that when one system gets updated, the other one gets updated in a timely manner, and also handling things like data conflicts, or this update overwrites that update which just got overwritten by someone else, and that sort of ruling already exists. The other good thing about a SaaS integration like these is that you can expand from one to many. So you can do one integration and then start adding more and more and more as you go. So a lot of pros around that. And if you're just putting your foot into the integration area, this can be a fantastic way to get into it and keep going from there. The cons, well, the feature upgrades are in lockstep with the supplier. So if you want a new feature upgrade, you need to wait for that supplier to be willing to do that upgrade. And I've heard of, not necessarily with these guys, but I've heard of SaaS suppliers with clients even willing to pay them money to do the upgrade. It's still going to take 6 months to put it into the development pipeline just due to resources. You have no IP ownership of the rules or the code that does the connections. This can be an issue with some people, and if you've got complex business rules, that can be a deal breaker. Customization is possible, but it has limits. So you can customize the way the connectors are happening or connect to different things, but there are limits inherent in the system on what you can and can't do. You've also got the ongoing service charge, and it's all in the cloud and it's not private data, which makes hosting it on your own servers and that sort of thing more complex, if not impossible, depending on which service you use. So the SaaS integration has its benefits in that it's quick and fast and sort of no software approach. However, the cons also sit there in terms of having to not be able to do exactly what you need and having that fairly high ongoing cost. So it's a balancing act. The next way you can do it is a hybrid SaaS custom solution, and there's a service called Force Connect that does that, which we also run. This is where the SaaS part handles one side of the connectivity. So in Force Connect's case, the Salesforce connection's all done, and then we make custom connectors for each endpoint or each data silo that you want to connect. So the good thing about this is that those custom connectors can be written to be exactly what we need to be able to pull data out of those endpoints. The hybrid SaaS custom solution is sort of the halfway point between something like MuleSoft and a 100% custom solution. So it's cheaper than the 100% custom solution because you only have to implement about a third of it uniquely for your own business. It's highly customizable. It can connect to basically anything because we can program it to connect to whatever's out there. And there are already synchronization rules that exist, so they don't have to be rewritten. It can be a private solution that can host in private data centers and things like that, and can expand from one to many. The cons on this, again, the feature upgrades are lockstep with the supplier. There's no IP ownership. There's an ongoing service charge, and it does have a higher upfront cost than just the pure SaaS solution, but that's balanced by it being a lot more customizable and being able to connect to anything. The final type would be a 100% custom solution. Now, this one is quite interesting, and some clients do actually go ahead and do this one, mainly because you can program exactly what's needed and wanted. There's sort of no compromise on it except for budgetary constraints. The client owns the intellectual property. It can connect to anything, and it's able to scale to meet any demand, and can even be hosted on private solution, can expand from one to many, and it even includes things like complex rules or data cleaning. So this custom solution would be like a Ruby on Rails application or something that you ran on top of Heroku or AWS or something like that, that was built from the ground up to integrate with your various data silos and coordinate those activities. Now, where this comes into its own is if the data that you're getting from one of your data silos actually needs to be modified or side checked or cleaned up or changed in some way before it goes to the other system. Now, a fantastic example of that would be, say you had Internet of Things devices sending all these logs of data. You wouldn't necessarily want to put every bit of data that came from that into, say, your Salesforce instance, because then you're paying massive data charges on log data that you would never even look at. Over time, you just wouldn't even look at it. And further, if you were putting all those log entries, so you can imagine an Internet of Things device every minute sending an update saying, yeah, I'm still alive, I'm all good. If all 14,000 of those per day ended up in, is it 14,000 or whatever it is, 1,440 once per minute, if every one of those log updates ended up in Salesforce, you can imagine your data storage bill is going to become pretty high. But furthermore, no one would ever look at it. It would just be data. It's not useful information. So a custom integration platform can do things like take all of that aggregate data for the day and aggregate it into one, this system was up yesterday. And then if it was up again today with no errors, that record would just get updated that said the system's now been up for 2 days without errors. And then if it went for 5 weeks with no errors, it would still be one line of data in Salesforce saying the system's now been up for, a week, 5 weeks, 10 weeks, however long it is. So this ability to modify the data as it's going through is really where the custom solution would lie. Also, sometimes you need data to be manually side checked and things like this before it gets integrated. That's something you could build into the custom system, and all these sorts of other little bits and bobs. The cons on this side is that it's absolutely the most expensive option. You're dealing with developing a software project from scratch, from zero, all the way up to deployed. There are ongoing maintenance costs and ongoing hosting charges. So they're the three options. Now, which one you use, that's a hard question to answer in the general, because you really need more data about it. However, if any of you have a data silo that you have questions about, send us a link, send us an email and ask us, and we will definitely point you in the right direction. We won't recommend a 100% custom solution if that's not what you need, because at the end of the day, it doesn't help us and it doesn't help you. We build 100% custom solutions, but we also build this hybrid SaaS custom solution, and we can point you in the right direction of the correct SaaS integration. If all you needed to do, for example, was to hook up sales values in Xero to Salesforce, that would probably be solved through a simple Zapier connection that cost you $15, $30 a month. If you needed to do something more complex than that, that might be solved quite happily through MuleSoft. And if you needed to go more complex than that, that might be done quite happily through something like Force Connect. It's the very rare situation that you would build a 100% custom solution for data integration, because this is mostly a solved problem, and there are a lot of good solutions out there which will solve what you need. But the 100% custom solution requirements do exist, and that's why we are here to help you with that. So the next thing to look at, or the last thing to look at really, over the next five minutes or so, is which data silo to integrate first. And this is a pretty important question, because you want to integrate one that gives you the biggest bang for buck. So in looking at which one to integrate, you want to look at the costs. How much cost is there to do the integration? And also, how much is the current cost to manually perform the integration or do it via CSV or whatever else? If you've got 10 staff sitting there, well, that's a wages bill of between $500,000 and $1 million a year, depending on how much they're paid, or less. I mean, but whatever, there's a decent size wages bill there, and that needs to be taken into account in terms of the cost of integration. But also things like errors. How much do the errors cost? Are there contracts around this data? Are there service level agreements around the data? And if the wrong data is in there, do the wrong service level agreement violations get triggered, which cause problems down the line? So you need to look at those costs around the data integration, and then look at the benefit on the other side of, are we going to have a more informed sales team, or we're going to make better sales? The support staff, will they be better informed? Are we going to have less errors in the system? Are there better business analytics that we can look at? What are the benefits of having this integration? And then you'd look at that at a couple of the pain points. So the key integration points in the company, they're the ones that you'd want to view. And then when you come up with that cost benefit, you want to pick the biggest bang for buck on the data integration and go for it. So once you find that high level system, or the one that is producing the most errors or has the most benefit for returning value to the company, that would be the one that you want to go for, and then get some ideas on pricing and quoting around that. And with that, you can contact us and we'll help you get onto it. So that's the overall view of what I wanted to explain to you today. I know that it's not the full 1 hour, but I like doing these as quickly as possible and leaving lots of time if anyone does have questions. If not, that's also okay. You can contact us at any time through our email or phone, and let us know if you have any questions about data integration or want help with coming up with a solution to some data integration problem on data silos. Data silos as an idea is not an incredibly sexy part of what the technology business does, but they're some of the most important and critical features and systems that we can implement, because it allows more people to communicate and have that connected ability with the data we need to hand, which is sort of the whole promise of what we were meant to do in this world of, you know, the paperless office and all that sort of stuff. But we never quite get there for some reason, because these data silos exist. So thank you very much for attending. You're welcome to ask any questions, or otherwise we'll leave it at that. I'll stay on the line for a minute or two in case someone's typing, and then we'll go from there. So thank you very much, and I hope you all have a fantastic day.